It was not easy seeing both parents having mental health issues. And back then, I did not know that it was called mental health.
Hi guys, in today's episode, my guest refers to herself as a child whisperer. I'm really curious to know what that means, what it entails. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Marugi.
As you introduce yourself, please tell us what a child whisperer does and what that entails. Yeah.
Right, thank you for having me. My name is Shiru Macharia. I am a child and adolescent therapist. And child whisperer just sounds easy on the tongue. Yeah.
Tell us, how did you get into this profession? What's the story? What story do you have about this?
You want the long story or the short story?
All of it.
I got into this profession because it was a childhood dream, but I didn't get into it right after, college or university. I did a number of stints, and I just was not satisfied. And so going back to school made me realize that, okay, I was actually called into this profession. And when I look back, I remember there's a conversation we had with my dad. One time he asked me, what would you like to be when you grow up? And that time he had been struggling with mental health issues, and so was my mom. And I remember telling him that I'd like to be a doctor that deals with issues like the ones that you're facing. Yeah, so moving forward, I found myself in this profession.
You've talked about your dad and your mom dealing with mental health issues. Would you tell us a bit of that and how it affected you back then?
It was not easy seeing both parents having mental health issues. And back then, I did not know that it was called mental health challenges or mental health disorders. I would just only see how they would behave. Then there would be a stint in the hospital, and then after the hospital, they would come back home. Well, these are on different occasions. And either parent has to take medicine for a while, and of course their behavior is not the same. So it was not easy having to deal with or living with parents who had mental health issues, because I did not understand what it is they were going through, but I could see the struggle, and I felt so sad for them.
There are a number of mental health disorders. Which mental health disorder exactly was your dad dealing with and your mom was dealing with?
Strangely, they both had the same disorder, bipolar disorder. I only came to know about that disorder way later when I was taking my mom to hospital and having to sit down with the psychiatrist and being told this is what your mom is going through or she's experiencing. For my dad, I knew way later, after he had already passed on, that he was actually going through bipolar disorder. Yeah.
You've mentioned that you took your mom to hospital and that's when you realized she had a mental health disorder. When was that? How old were you then?
I would say probably like 24, 25. But initially she had gone to hospital quite a number of times. My dad used to take her. He'd know when she's unwell. My mom used to take my dad when he was unwell. Sometimes there would be refusal of going to the hospital. And so it would be a struggle to get either one of them who needed the help to hospital. Way later, when now I was dealing with my mom, that's when I got to understand that, oh, okay, actually, this is what she's going through, and this is the treatment that she requires. And so it made me want to dig more and find out what is this disorder, what is it like for her. Yeah.
Looking back into your childhood, what do you remember about your parents and how the mental health disorders manifested themselves at home?
I would say I would remember when I was around 7 or 8 years old. There was a time my dad had gone abroad for work, and my mom was expectant with my sister, younger sister, and just right about the time that she was about to deliver my sister, my dad was traveled back home, and the trip was cut short. And I remember he was hospitalized, and my mom also had to be hospitalized. And I had questions like, what's going on? So that was my first encounter with mental health issues that my parents were going through. My mom had to go to hospital to deliver the child, and my dad because of the disorder that he had.
So during the times that your parents were having their episodes, what was home looking like at that point? A typical day?
The very first time I had an experience of my mom going through that particular episode was in 1999, and she had to be hospitalized for about a week. I remember that week I was in my final year in primary school, and there was a trip that was supposed to happen, and usually I was used to my mom preparing for me the things I would need for the trip, like the snacks, my breakfast and all that. We didn't have help at that point. And I remember that the day for that trip, I had to wake up at like 3 a.m. To prepare the snacks that I'll have to carry. You know, the drop scones, the mandazis. And it's not like I had experience doing that. For example, I remember trying to make spiced mandazi, and I thought you put the spice inside the fat to make the mandazi spicy. And yeah, I carried black mandazis.
Did you ever see the manifestation of the disorder at home? The symptoms, how they came out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the symptoms were there. My child brain could not process like, oh, okay, this is a disorder. The only thing I could process was that this is unlike mom, or this is unlike dad. For instance, that time before my mom was taken to hospital, a few days before, I remember she was not sleeping, she was not eating. She would say she doesn't feel like eating or anything. She would just be somewhere in the corner of the house praying. And a particular weekend, my dad and my sis were very close. So on a particular weekend, my dad went with my sister on an outing, and I was home with my mom. And then when it reached about 4 or 5 p.m. in the evening, as I was basking in the sun, my mom came out, and now when I think about it, she was irrational, because she would say something like, where's your father? Like, where's the child? Because my sister was way younger. And I tell her that they've just gone for an outing, they're coming back. So when my dad came back, she, looked like she was attacking him with words like, you went to sacrifice our child, something like that. And I got confused because I could see my dad was okay, my sis is okay, and that was their normal kind of routine to go on their outings. And as a child, I thought, my dad can actually do that. I was not able to perceive that this is a mental disorder. This is not normal to say that somebody is going to sacrifice your child, because that child you're talking about is also his child. Yeah.
In retrospect, looking at what happened in your childhood and the experiences you went through, and now being cognizant of what was happening to your parents, how has that affected you, and how would you say those experiences shaped you, if at all?
Going through those experiences was not an easy thing, especially when I look back, I was a child. And I did not have either one of my siblings to lie back on, like talk to or engage with. And also, my mom, going through all those kind of things, used to tell us that, for example, when she's okay, she's not in an episode, she would say, na msiende kuongea na watu, usiende kuambia watu. You know, it was a silencing kind of thing, because, like I said, mental health was a taboo. Saying somebody has a mental health disorder then was, somebody would use such a really strong Kiswahili word. And so I understand how she was saying, usiende kuambia watu, but on the flip side, it silenced me in the sense that even when I was going through my own issues, I was not able to open up to anyone and share with the right people on my experiences. And so I tended to hold back onto so many traumas that I had gone through, traumas that changed the way I would think about things. Sometimes you'd find like you're overthinking something, which clearly there's nothing to think about. Yeah. We call that irrational thoughts. Yeah. And there's a therapy for that. And yeah, it's the thing about going through a traumatic experience like that. Why I call it traumatic is that it's an experience that somebody is not supposed to go through, but they had to go through it. It changes how you think about things. Yeah.
And speaking of traumas, what traumas would you say you got from your parents' disorder, mental health disorder?
I would say not having both my parents at the same time, all the time. At one point I was with my mom, at one point I was with my dad, because either one of them was in hospital. And you know, family dynamics change when you don't have one particular parent present, because you get a certain kind of nurture from your dad, the things that your dad is able to do for you and things that your mom is able to do for you. So yeah, some of those things really changed who I am or who I was, because, you know, after now becoming more aware of what I had gone through, obviously had to go through therapy and to be able to process those experiences, and you know, came to know that it was not okay for me to go through that, but I went through that. Yeah.
And you say you went through therapy. At what age did you go through therapy, and would you say you have healed your childhood wounds?
I went through therapy as as an adult, in my 30s. I would say I had to be intentional about the issues I was going through, the issues I was carrying. I think I remembered what I wanted to say initially about the trauma. Once you go through a traumatic experience, your body kind of keeps score. Like, you carry the stresses of that experience within you until you get an opportunity to be able to speak with somebody and release those experiences so that they're not part and parcel of you. Having gone through therapy, it helped me to process what I had gone through and realize, oh, okay, yes, it was not okay. Oh, that's what you call it. Because as humans, sometimes we go through things and we're not able to put a finger to it, like, what was that I went through? And just keeps on lingering through your mind or through your body. And so, yeah, therapy helped 100%. Initially, for me, talking about this experience, this part of my life, I would be in tears. Yeah, I would be in tears because it was an obvious sign that I had not processed what I had gone through. Yeah.
And at what point did you put a finger into it that you're having issues, I'm having issues, and there are things I need to deal with, there are things I need to heal from?
When I was an adult, unfortunately, having gone through those experiences, let's say, for example, when I was in my 20s, I also, engaged with life in different ways. Like, I was working, I had a social life, or still have. But there are ways that you'd behave and you won't be able to understand why you behaved like that. For instance, when forming a new relationship, you'd find that you're closed off trying to talk about things that happened to you in your childhood, and you don't understand why you're closed off. I was not able to put a finger why I was not able to share what I had gone through that time. But going through therapy, I realized, oh, okay, I went through trauma and it was not okay, but I've processed it. Now I talk about it without feeling emotional about it. And I feel like the more I talk about it, the more people become aware of, people go through things and it's okay to talk about it.
And now you're a child therapist, or rather you said earlier you're a child whisperer.
Yes, I am.
Yeah, just tell us more about that.
Having gone through my traumatic experiences as a child, I realized that children don't have to experience those things. But sometimes life happens and you're not able to control that. And so if they go through such experiences, do they have somebody they can talk to about those experiences they went through? Because those experiences change who they are as a person, change how they think, how they behave, brings on other issues like self-esteem, low self-esteem. And so a child or an adolescent doesn't have to go through that and wait another 10, 20 years to be able to talk to a therapist. Whilst, if a child therapist or an adolescent therapist is available to talk about that with the child, they're able to process those traumas way early in their lives, and they're able to move on with life, not carrying the load of what they had gone through. Yeah.
And what are you finding yourself dealing with mostly? What issues are there in our society right now that you find yourself really dealing with and having to sort out?
Wow. Divorce. Yeah. Um, Child abuse, for example, sexual abuse, abandonment, neglect. And neglect can be in different forms. It can be physical neglect, emotional neglect, bullying. Yeah, so many things that people are going through. And if they are not, these people are not given the opportunity to be able to speak about them and process them and put, a name to what they are going through, then they carry them around with them, and it totally changes them. Because you see, a child and an adolescent, a child grows into an adolescent where there are physical changes that happen, there are developmental changes happening in them, and so their brain is not fully developed. And so these experiences, if they go through them and their brains are not fully developed, it totally changes, rewires how they think, or how they perceive about their world. And so it's so important for a child therapist or an adolescent therapist to be able to speak with the child and process the feelings that the child is having, so that they can be able to live their lives to the fullest.
So how are the children coming to you? How are they manifesting the issues that they are dealing with back at home, where they're, and also maybe at school? What are some of the behaviors they're manifesting?
You find children or adolescents, they'll come with issues like they don't want to talk anymore, their behavior changes, they engage in substance use, they're drinking, they're smoking, they're using drugs. Some also have sexuality issues. Like for instance, they would engage in high risky behaviors with people of the opposite sex, or sometimes even people of the same sex. You'll find some of them also come with issues like they run away from home. Yeah. The issues, how they present them, they can be so varied. But until a therapist is able to sit down with them and be able to understand from where they're coming from, in the sense that when did this issue begin, then we go back and look into your history, like your childhood, how was it, how you developed. Did you develop in the how do I say it, in the way that you expected to develop, for instance? Were you able to talk at the point you're supposed to be able to talk? Are you able to engage in school activities, for instance? When you're being taught, are you able to understand, and all those things? So, yeah.
And how young are these children that you're dealing with?
Some as young as 3 or 4. As long as a child is able to speak, yeah, we can be able to engage. Yeah.
But when a child is brought to you, of course they're brought by the parents, right? And the issue is a divorce, what you talked about, or neglect. Where do you start with the child, and at what point? Because clearly the issue is the parents. At what point do you involve the parents as well, if at all?
The parents will be involved in the sense that if it's one parent who brings the child, I would need to find out information like about this child. How is the setting at home? How was the child born? Is the child going to school and all that? Are there any changes in between, or anything that has that has not been happening in the child's life and used to happen that has changed? So I would take a lot of history with the parents first, and then engage with the child and hear what the child is saying. And then when I realize what the problem is, at that point then I'd have to engage the parents or the parent and tell them this is what the child is going through, and this issue needs to be addressed, and so we come to an agreement of the treatment or the way forward for the child in the best interests of the child. Yeah.
So what mistakes are you seeing younger parents making at the moment? Yes.
I see younger parents generally making choices that are not pro-child. They are pro themselves, for instance. For example, parents maybe who are separated or divorced, they will fight for their own interests as opposed to fighting for the interests of the child. For instance, when parents are separated, you'll find that either party is on a revenge mission, wanting the other party to feel the pain of maybe the relationship breaking, not working. And so they forget that on the hindsight, they're not actually hurting the other parent, they're hurting the child, in the sense that whatever decision that you want to make and you want it to affect the other parent, the child will be affected definitely, because maybe it means the other parent won't have access to their mother or their father on a regular basis. And so the child is forced to bond with only one parent, whereas the child already has two parents. So it would be great in the interests of the child for the parents who are not on the same page, whatever decisions they make, to put the interests of the child first.
I'm just curious, as a therapist and all the information that is thrown at you, do you find yourself getting affected or even sometimes getting triggered? How so?
We all have our own issues, and some issues that you hear from the patients or from the clients, they might trigger something that you went through that you're not even aware. A therapist might find themselves like, wow, that's a touchy issue, and there's leeway for the therapist to be able to say that I'm not able to handle this issue because it's triggering for me, and it's okay to refer the patient to another therapist who'll be able to handle that issue. Yeah.
Now that you're older, looking back at the 7-8-year-old self, if you had received therapy sessions, how would that have changed for you?
That would have changed a lot of things for me. For instance, I would have been able to understand things from the perspective of a 7-8-year-old, to understand what my parents are going through and not blame myself for what they were going through, or thinking that if I do this, it will make my mom sick or my dad sick. Because those are the kind of thoughts children have. They've not, their brains are not developed to that extent that they would think that this is not their fault. But that's how they think. And so having no access to a therapist then formed certain beliefs for me that stayed with me for such a long time, of which were not the right kind of beliefs or the right kind of thoughts to carry with. Yeah. So a therapist would have changed that for me, that kind of perspective for me.
And as we wrap up, what advice would you give to parents on helping their children be in comfortable spaces and cope with day-to-day struggles?
I would say, and the parents can be able to help their children build up on skills that they themselves, the children have been directed to. For example, if a child is going through maybe academic challenges in school or bullying, I would recommend for the parent to engage with that child and lead that child to a place where they can be able to self-discover and realize, oh, I can actually maybe stand up for myself, or request, or not even request, or tell the bully that I am not want to be bullied. Be confident in my own skin, as opposed to a parent telling the child what to do, because you are not helping the child to be able to make their own decisions. So listening to the child, hearing them out, and directing that conversation to a place where the child can be able to discover and have a light bulb moment and say, actually, you know, if I do this, then I think that bully will stop from harassing me or being in my face all the time. The parents to cultivate a culture of resilience. Without resilience, then we would not be able to go through the everyday struggles that we go through, because this life always has struggles. Be actively present for the children. Children know when we're not present. We are present in the body, but not present listening to them actively, because we are distracted maybe by TV, social media, our phones, or just general day-to-day things that have happened maybe in the office, at work, and all that. So being present, lending an ear to the child. When the child feels heard, it goes a long way for them. It can be frustrating for a child to come to you and lay out their burdens, and you're not in the present. If anything, you keep on saying, oh, and then you said, oh, and then you listen, and then, you know, there's a way you can make the child know that you've heard what they're saying and you understand. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you opening up to us and being vulnerable enough to share your experiences and seeing your journey into therapy, that it has helped you and you're helping others. You're a voice in this generation, and I hope it goes a long way into helping those who are coming behind us. Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Well, today's conversation has been enlightening for me. I'd like to hear from you what your takeaways have been from today's episode. In the meantime, please like, share, and subscribe. See you on the next one.